Hey guys, Dozer here, bringing you a new video. Except this time it's not just me. We've got a special guest on the channel to talk about all things Prism, both past, present, and future. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey everyone, my name's Michael, but you'll probably know me better as Prez. I have been given the title of the dad of Prism Chat recently, and honestly it's the title I think fits me quite well. I love this game. I love playing Prism. I love everything about this hero and her playstyle. So many of the cards are just so interesting and so deep, and I'm really excited to be here and talk about all things Prism.
Great. So again, thank you for coming on to the channel and for offering your experience, and hopefully we'll have some good discussion, both maybe we agree on some stuff and maybe we still disagree on some stuff. I know that I tend to be pretty opinionated and people tend to have their own disagreements with that sometimes, so it'll be interesting to see where we go. So
I've never been shy about disagreeing with you, Doz.
Of course, and we wouldn't have it any other way. So
exactly.
On the plan today for the menu here, we're going to be talking about Prism's deck builds, how they evolved over time, kind of the history of them, and whether or not the future of Prism is going to look similar or very different from how it traditionally went. The main point of contention here is going to be Iris versus Luminaris builds, and maybe we got it wrong the entire time. And so I think Prez here is going to be on the Iris side, and I'm going to at least do my best to take up the Luminaris argument, and we'll see where we can go. So to start off, let's start with Monarch. Prism's release, first edition came out. That was a little bit before my time, but once Unlimited came out, everybody was pretty positive on Prism, I remember. She wasn't necessarily the most dominant hero, and people were still trying to figure her out, but she was a powerhouse right from the get-go, and you could make some really silly builds work with her, as I found.
Oh, yes.
So what do you think was the popular decklist standard at the time? And what do you think kept Iris builds from becoming the de facto choice, even though I think it saw some experimentation at the time?
Well, I mean, everyone tunnel visioned, right? You see a weapon with Majestic on it, you see a weapon with Token on it, the Majestic's going to be more powerful. And it is actually the case here. Luminaris is the more powerful weapon. It is just a completely different deck to the Iris lists that I'm going to be talking about. So I mean, the de facto Prism lists in the very beginning were Luminaris builds. I don't know, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I had the first recorded Prism list, because I remember we had a winner box tournament in New Zealand like a week after Monarch's release. And there was a whole bunch of dooming going on in New Zealand because we got to the finals of that event and it was a Prism mirror. And everyone's going, oh no, this new hero, it's a week into the format and it's already a mirror match in the final, what's going on? And it turns out that was just a bit of a hint of things to come. But so right from the get-go, Luminaris was the de facto weapon of choice. Which meant lots of yellows, lots of go again, lots of heralds, and that quintessential pivot strategy where you could play auras or aggressive as needed.
I do remember that the deck devastation kind of videos were being dropped by LSS at the time, and I remember when they played Prism in those videos, they had a lot of pummel focus. I remember pummel being a pretty big thing that people were focused on at the time, mainly because erudition with pummel, you know, that's kind of a blowout, and all those heralds come in for 2 cost with the go again, so it was attractive at the time. And so I do remember maybe there was some influence as well on deck builds where we saw the devs, right, building the hero in a certain way, and we might have taken some clues from that. They don't think they were using Iris at the time, right? So I do agree, though. I think that Luminaris was the de facto choice at the time, just because a lot of the cards that we had access to at the time were either straight up light illusionist or light cards or generics. There weren't really any other things that we could use because the card pool was so small at the time. And many of those cards had 2 block, right? A lot of the generics at the time from Monarch, a lot of the generics in general, right, only had 2 block. And so we were trying to construct a deck. I remember a lot of us were using blue Illuminate and, you know, just kind of anything that we could get our hands on to kind of make the deck function. So we actually have a couple lists ready to talk about here. And so we're going to go in the time machine for a second and go back to one of Baby Dozer's very first Prism lists, all the way back in the olden year of 2021 in July. I've been playing the game for about a month at this point, and let's just take a look here. Here we go. Look at that. We got Luminaris, Vestige, Footsteps, Halo, Dreamweavers. Pretty defensible, I think, for the time. You know, I've got my signature glistens for everybody who knows my proclivity there. But we got our Heralds. We've got some other cards here, Soul Shields, Tome of Divinities, good amounts of yellows, and some auras in the sideboard, right? The Cataclysms. We've got some of the bones of Prism's best cards, but aside from the yellow Plunder Runs or the Pummels, it's weird to look at a list like this now, right?
Very much so. I mean, Plunder Run was still legal back then, so that's another difference. But I mean, all these tech cards, right? All of these tech cards were good in Prism. It was always just the roles that they served that changed. And you could fit a list together with Plunder Runs, with Pummels, you know, even 6 of them if you wanted. And the list works, the list is powerful, because that's the game plan you're committing towards. As time went on, Plunder Run and Pummel were no longer the best inclusions, I think. But I'm willing to be wrong on that one.
Yeah, I think, thinking back, I remember I played a lot on the public Discord at the time with webcam games, mainly. And that's how I got into playing the game, because I didn't really have a local scene at the time. And I remember playing against a lot of Chain and thinking to myself, wow, wait a minute, everything I'm trying is failing. What's going on? You know, and I didn't realize how strong he was relative to everybody else at the time until I got a bit more experienced in the game. And so I remember trying to be as aggressive as possible. Like, how much damage can I put out? Can I ever try and race him? You know, they're cracking your Phantasms with CNCs, with their Soul Reaping, you know, you name it. And then a buddy of mine actually was like, why don't you just go the complete opposite direction? Just be really defensive. And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. And that was how the whole tank thing was born, right? Just block as much as possible, abuse Luminaris' free poke every turn. And then I was able to actually beat Chain sometimes, which was kind of cool. You know, his fatiguing, blocking out, that ended up being kind of the main way to handle him for a while. So
Fatigue. I think Fatigue was always the best line for Prism into Chain. And you did get this sort of evolution of a meta within a meta, specifically in the Prism Chain matchup, where Prisms would tech for Fatigue and then Chains would see it, and lists would evolve and adapt over time, trying to counter each other's strategies as they changed.
And don't forget the mind game of walking up to the Chain match and you reveal Prism, and then you're talking during sideboard and you're like, oh man, like this is gonna be a really fun game. I'm gonna have to, you know, block out the whole time, and then they, you know, stack their deck full of all their cards. Then you rock out with the 60 card aggressive list, and they're not ready for it because they took out all their poppers. So
good old bonk Prism is what I used to call it. You know, Chain, you need to go to horny jail. Bonk. Here's a Phantasmaclasm.
Exactly. So yeah, so Monarch came and went. We had a lot of competitive success for Prism at the time. She was able to do quite well in the Road to Nationals season, which was around that period of time, as we led up to the release of Tales of Aria at the Las Vegas Calling in America. So once we got to Tales of Aria, though, the meta with Tyler Horspool's iconic win in the finals as Prism against Chain, we were able to see Briar, Oldham, and Lexi joined the competitive scene. And so how did Prism lists evolve at the time? And what were the main challenges that she faced? And how did those challenges direct how those builds kind of evolved?
I mean, in terms of evolution at the time, I don't think there was much. I think Prism's card pool at the time was a little bit underexplored, a little bit shallow just in general. And we ended up in this situation where new heroes came into the meta and Prism looked at them and said, well, Lexi's a ranger, so based on what we know from Azalea, she has to be irrelevant. Oldham, that's a guardian, cool, that matchup's an auto win, and Briar, ooh, that's an aggro deck. That's a bit of a tough one. Yeah, I don't really think Prism's adapted to Briar as much as they should. And honestly, this is the first point where I think Iris could have had a role in the metagame.
All right, so let's talk a bit more about that, because as far as I recall, right, for those who don't know, who are newer to the channel and like maybe didn't follow my mad science as much as maybe some others have, at the time I was really focused on this tank concept, right? Blocking a lot as Prism, using a lot of the exact same cards as a normal Prism list, but fundamentally using them in a different way, where instead of trying to hold and pivot, I would say, hey, you want my Eruditions? Sure, block, 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 block. maybe even in the late game throw some remembrances in there just to have some attacks again. But really using those Spectral Shields and just walls of Spectral Shields to outvalue people over time and prevent them from getting any headway into you. Think about your Bolton matchup. A lot of the times Bolton was actually pretty relevant during the Monarch meta. And what I realized when I was at the Las Vegas calling was, I can just block with non-attack actions and defense reactions, and he can't play the game.
Yeah.
Because he has to bend over backwards to get go again, and then you keep your shields, your auras alive, and they just can't really deal with you. Kind of similar for a lot of heroes, right? Like Dorinthia, Bravo, a lot of these heroes you could abuse with such a more aura-reliant strategy. And even though we had very few Spectras and we had very weak block ability, right, overall. And so when Briar came out, I had tried to carry this strategy forward, right? Oldham at first was kind of scary because of all the frostbites, but then I realized, wait a minute, this lets you turn on your go again even easier. This is, he doesn't really have that much damage, so this is actually totally fine.
You fool.
You're right. Lexi giving you frostbites. It's like, free damage from my Merciful. Thank you very much. That was totally cool. But with Briar and Rosetta, Ball Lightning, and a host of other types of aggressive cards like snatches off of plunder runs and all these things, it became very apparent very quickly that you cannot protect your shields. If you're trying to rely on using those as your offense and they're hitting you for 2 arcane, 2 physical off of 1 resource, you can't handle that with the card pool at the time. Now we have Oasis and similar cards like that, all you got, that might give you a bit more of that durability into those strategies. But at the time, it was pretty grim. So thinking about how Iris could slot into that metagame where Briar is throwing things like, Snatch with 2 Plunderons on it for go again, or, Channel Mount Heroics, or I don't even think that you did channel that much at the time. It was mostly just the Cheerios, right?
It was all Cheerios at the start, yeah.
How do you think that Iris could have had a chance there when we had literally no new cards, because there were basically no generics in Tales of Aria for us to experiment with?
Yeah, you're not wrong. The card pool would have made it a little bit harder at the time. But so when you talk about Tank Prism and when I talk about Iris Prism, I think the decks are genuinely approaching the game from the same point of view, where when I play Iris lists, I think, step 1, don't die. Step 2 is winning the game, and honestly, that is something that just works itself out down the road, where step 1 is don't die, and winning the game will just happen naturally as you play. So into Briar in specific, I think Iris would have had a better chance than the Luminaris builds did. Playing Luminaris in the Briar meta, I remember getting the matchup, 40-45% at best. Realistically, it's just an aggro deck. Your best chance into them is to play aggro into them, and you're relying on that slightly unfavored coin flip where you get more damage out of your deck in the first 4 turns than they do. And this was also why things like Pummel were in the list, because I genuinely believe that every single game I beat Briar, that I beat Briar in during that meta, was a game where I was able to CNC pummel them. And it's a little bit silly that at the end of the day we look back and we think, well, the one way that we were able to beat the worst matchup was by not relying on our class cards at all. You have to rely on these generics that the game is, it's a very, very powerful interaction. The game is almost balanced around it at this point. We have heroes that can play around CNC pummel and heroes that can't, with varying levels of success between them as a result. But yeah, Iris in that meta would have enabled the strategy of don't die, because we still had access to Fate Foreseen, we still had access to Sink Below, we still had access to Springboard Somersault, which probably would have had to be played in that meta. You had access to Sigil at that point, we had access to Sunkiss, but you generally don't want more than the 3 Sigils in any sort of defensive Prism deck, I think. And then you're just left with a class where you can build a class of block 3s, got a lot of blues. You can go to generics, because all of a sudden you're not leaning on Genesis so much, you're not leaning on having a yellow every single turn, so your pool of playable cards is a lot bigger. And you end up in this situation where you just have this incredibly defensive deck with the trump card of Arclight Sentinel, which would have been key. Arclight Sentinel is always key. I genuinely think it's the most powerful card in the game. I'm going to be incredibly sad if I don't get to play with it in Classic Constructed in the future. And it's just such a big safety valve. What can an aggro tech do? You know, unless you're playing some tech that genuinely lowers the power of your deck overall to play around it, there is no counterplay. And, you know, that is shown because the card costs 6. In Luminaris builds, it was generally your whole hand to play this one thing, and I used to think of it as a big red button where I say, hey, I don't like what you're doing, you're skipping your turn, but as a cost, I'm also going to skip mine, unless I manage to hold a yellow and make a shield, and I attacked you for 8, sorry about that. You know, there are ways to break the parity, but for the most part, you play it, you skip their turn at the cost of skipping yours. The Arclight would have been key in beating Briar in that meta. Anytime you know, cards that you can trade it for, things like plunder runs, things like letting them stack 2 nimbleisms on top, 2 nimbleism effects to get the embodiment of lightning. Later on into Channel Mount heroic variants, Arclight was your best counterplay against that. Let them play it out, let them get 1 counter, then on the next turn just slam it and save yourself, you know, up to 14, 15 damage through your hand. It's just a very, very powerful effect.
It is definitely very powerful, and anybody that's been on the receiving end of Arclight when you're playing a class that really can't deal with it, like Warrior or such, or you know, even Ranger, you know how that tends to go. But again, it's more of a like you said, it's that red button where normally the Prism's having to spend their entire hand, and even if they can crack back a little bit with, you know, the yellow pitch to get some pings off with the Luminaris auras, you're normally just passing your turn right back. But the benefit is they gave up setup, they gave up a power card, and you were able to kind of trade 1 for 1 in that way, which normally favored you if you were on the defensive end of that. So definitely think that could have been a potential avenue. My only concern, though, is just that when you have Briar coming at you with all this gas, if you don't see your Arclights and you're trying to block with, you know, even with your defense reactions or even with your 3 blocks, maybe even you guys have the blue heralds, right? Or the blue attacks that have the 3 block. You still have to deal with Rosetta at the time, right? Which was not able to be blocked efficiently, no matter what. There's no 1 card block for that card, at least at the time. And even now, I mean, still not really either. So, you know, it would be a tall ask to be able to weather that storm, especially when they had Ball Lightning Sting, right? Because if they could notice that you're using the Arclights and they were able to threaten them at, like, you know, threaten you so they get them out of you, and meanwhile they're pitch stacking Sting Ball, what can you really do at that point, right? So I think it would have been difficult still. I don't think it would have been an easy matchup, right? But maybe a bit better than the 45% that we were very happy with the, what was it, the monkey flip Prism, I believe was the term at the time.
Yeah, monkey flip, yeah, at the time. Well, I don't think the matchup would have been worse than the 40% we already had, which I think is key. And more importantly, I think it puts the matchup, even if the win percentage is around the same vein, it puts you in a position where you feel like you have more agency. So playing the aggressive variant, again, I felt like if I didn't see Erudition, CNC, and Pummel in my top 15 cards, I was having a bad time. Whereas if you're playing a variant that is built with not dying in mind, all of a sudden you get to see a lot more of your deck. Your block value per hand is higher on average. Even into Rune Blades, your yellow auras, they can be turned into 2 blocks to block Arcane. Heart of Fiendel is a key card that is very helpful against Rosetta Thorn, especially in combo with Phantasmal Footsteps. There are just so many things you can do, but playing the deck is all about eking out that value. So it would have still been difficult. It most likely would have been the worst matchup in the meta, but I think playing an Iris list in that meta would have given Prism players more agency in this specific matchup.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. So it is interesting too, because at the time, I remember once Briar kind of came and hit the scene at, you know, US Nats, British Nationals, all those kind of tournaments, very quickly we got that ban on Plunder Run, and I think it was Ball Lightning, if I'm remembering correctly. So once that happened, that might have just been an even better opportunity, right, for Prism to leverage those strategies. But once we got through the Tales of Aria meta, the floodgates opened, the skies actually opened up as well, and we got Everfest, the most out of nowhere innocuous set, where it's like, oh, this is just a fun set with a bunch of items and potions, and oh, we got some money cards that are kind of funny and janky. And then we also got things like Swarming Gloomveil, got things like the blue auras for Prism. We got things like a bunch of Guardian cards as well that were very scary. So how did the transition into Everfest, and we had Starvo, of course. I think it goes without saying, but just to say it, we had Starvo, right? So
yeah, we had Starvo.
With the Starvo Viserai Prism combination being the holy trinity of the meta at the time, as it kind of came to be for at least the ProQuest season, was there room for Iris in that world? How did it compare to the theoretical better matchup with Briar in Tales of Aria? And why do you think people still kind of stuck to Luminars, even if they had to beat Starvo, who is this boogeyman of the format?
Well, so one, Iris would not have had a good matchup into Viserai, at least not while Scalita was legal. I mean, I played that deck a lot. I love Viserai, and even for the most recent calling in Auckland, I was tempted to play Viserai, where I said, I will probably lose, but at least I'll have fun doing it. He's a very interesting hero, very, very fun to play, but Scalita was just unfair. And Iris Prism, almost by definition, gives your opponent a lot of room to do the things their deck wants to do. And into Scalita Viserai, if you gave that deck room to do what it wanted to do, you would be hit with, 30, 40, 50 damage in one turn cycle. I mean, maybe not in CC. I played it so much in Blitz, and I remember just the most insane, even turn 2 plays, where you could functionally OTK your opponent. So let's not play Iris into an aggro deck that has an OTK combo backup plan. That doesn't sound like a great idea. Starvo was the other boogeyman, of course, and this is another one where I'm like, well, it would be interesting to see how it plays out, but I do think Starvo would not have been amazing for Iris. There was this little window where Scalitavis and Starvo existed in the same format, right? Where
yes, at the beginning of the ProQuest season especially, that was when Viserai had access to everything, and Starvo was still people were still trying to figure out, is this casino build the way to play it? And they're like, hey, I won, I threw my cards on the table and I won. So they kind of did end up being the main way that people played it still.
Yes, they did. We did see some more mid-rangey builds emerge towards the tail end of the meta, but casino worked. And, even just the idea of every single turn demanding a strong defensive tool is maybe what would have pushed Iris out. So again, step 1, don't die. You play a lot of tools to help yourself not die, but Starvo, this casino variant especially, was incredibly, just consistent. And that was the point. Every single turn, I'm going to turn on my hero power, I'm going to get this buff. And that's why I'm not sure if Iris would have done well in that meta, but I think it would have been very interesting to try.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to try. My main thought is just on the average turn when you're playing as Prism against Starvo, at least with the Luminaris builds, the benefit was you could pitch a yellow and a blue or a yellow and a yellow, drop your yellow aura, swing wide with anything that's already on the board, and then finish your turn with a blue aura. That was extremely important for being able to pressure the Starvo when he can only kill one aura a turn unless he has Blink, Lead the Charge, or Time Skippers, which he often did. But if you wanted to be able to get some of your value over time, you really needed to take those turns to get that incremental value in so you could actually threaten him to close out the game and get cards out of his hand so that he could not do the triple fuse, ding, 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 bazinga, whatever you want to call it. And so I think Iris's main weakness against Starvo would have been that lack of ability to play off those 4-card hands and put pressure out. Because like you said, you're giving them a lot of time to set up and do their own thing. And without that incremental advantage over time, keeping your entire hand to pay 3 to swing with Iris on your auras when your attack actions aren't going to do very much to Starvo is a tall order to be able to survive through all the dominating, all the Oaken ults, and all the crippling crushes. Quite a lot.
The way I see that matchup ever being winning for an Iris list is again just trying to set up some number of non-token auras and looking for a pivot where Starvo presents something like a Breakground, where they're forced to just present a 7 damage vanilla no on hit effect, and that's genuinely the window where Iris would have been able to pivot. And if you are able to capture that window, have the life total at the time to just soak that damage and gain tempo, you're able to transition to this, well, I'm just going to attack you for 16 every single turn. 12 to 16, depending on if you draw your 4 blues or not. And I'm going to, if not, I'm going to continue developing my board state. It's going to be very similar to Luminar's Prism. It's just a little bit slower, a lot more consistent. Slow and steady wins the race. And the problem with Starvo was that being slow and steady was not always good into them. So yeah, again, interesting. I genuinely don't know if Iris would have been able to perform in that meta, but I think there is, with hindsight, there was a chance that it would have been able to be a contender.
For sure. Yeah, so once we got through Everfest, where we had the Pro Tour, where Chain ended up winning the first Pro Tour ever in New Jersey, as well as Starvo winning the calling at that event, both of them hitting Living Legend at the same time, Prism had the floodgates kind of opened where she no longer had to worry about Viserai with Scalita because it was banned. And we had Uprising just around the corner with Dromai, Icelander, and Phi coming out. And Prism kind of had a field day, right? Prism was very well positioned to do well into that metagame because not only was Oldhim still a very good matchup for Prism, but the bans to Briar had made it a winnable matchup. It wasn't an easy matchup by any means, but I remember quite a number of matchups with Briar where if you just got enough auras out with the Everfest auras and just swarmed them out, you could do pretty well. Beyond that, the Icelander was I think probably one of the worst matchups, one of the most one-sided matchups I've ever seen in Flesh and Blood. Because at least with Kano, he could try and kill you. Icelander, though, her main win con was giving you Frostbites, and you get Merciful out and she can't break those at the time. I mean, it was just a slaughter. And I don't think the whole Bulllander thing at the time even would have made a difference at all. I think it would have still been pretty abysmal. Although maybe someone has some disagreement on that, but
I've played a lot of the Prism Icelander matchup in Blitz, of course, and Bully is a little bit closer. They genuinely have the ability to deal with a limited number of Spectres, but it's a scar for a scar going into it. If you have to throw a Wounded Bull into a Spectre, you're having a really bad time, and we wouldn't have been playing the list in Blitz if we didn't think that Icelander was a winning matchup.
For sure. And of course, there was Dromai as well. I remember when you have to pick between 2 illusionists and you're excited to use both of them. And you have the dragons with Dromai who don't turn off your opponent's turn if they get killed. They have Phantasm as well. And you've got Prism with the ability to dump Spectras, use Heralds that don't have to hit heroes. They just have to hit. So you could throw an Erudition into a dragon, draw 2, keep going, just blow up the Dromai's board, perfectly kill the dragons with your Spectral Shields and Aura Pings. It was pretty one-sided as well. And even Phi wasn't too bad because of your ability to pivot into those new aggressive attack actions like Mirage Metamorph and a whole bunch of these other red Wartune Heralds and protections to try and race them effectively as well. So how did Prism fare in Uprising, and did she even need Iris? Or would it have been better than the Luminaris builds that were, I'm pretty certain, still popular at the time?
Yeah. Did Prism actually make it into the Uprising CC format? When did Living Legend happen?
So the Living Legend happened, I believe, in the second ProQuest season, because that would have been the time where you were allowed to play Prism. There were tournament results coming in where she was a very big part of the metagame. But she was, I think, when Uprising metagame started, she had 2 points to Living Legend. And so any win was going to set her over once the actual
update happened.
The Living Legend, tally happened.
A single ProQuest win.
Yeah. something like that.
Okay, no, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, well, again, Icelander, very favored matchup. Dromai is a matchup that is unfavored in Blitz, but you have the advantage of Dromai not being a real hero. Dromai fans, don't at me. And of course, in Classic Constructed with sideboard space, you have the ability to tick. And just to be clear, the auto loss matchups of Iris, because it does have them. I've got a lot of experience playing this deck in Blitz now, and there are some auto loss matchups. They are very specifically Luminaris Prism and Dromai. These are the matchups where it just isn't worth. It's honestly not even worth playing the game most of the time, because you're functionally a Guardian deck that has multiple hammers, and you can swing for 4 with Go Again. And over time, you do genuinely just outvalue your opponent while not dying. But putting yourself in the Guardian's shoes, it gives you a little bit of empathy as a former, Illusionist player, and will still be future Illusionist player, of course. Where Luminaris is just incredibly efficient. You can't beat it. They play auras, you have to pay 3 resources and have something to attack with to declare them. They just say, oh, my attacks, they cost 0. 0 is a lot less than 3. Oh no, what a shame. And it's just heinous. It's truly an unwinnable matchup. But, again, in that meta, Dromai is not as bad as Luminaris Prism. So I do think that with a healthy amount of tech, we're looking at probably in the lines of 6 to 9 6-power Phantasm triggers. We're looking at some form of maybe even just regular Go Again attacks to clear key dragons. It's the kind of thing where there would have had to be some innovation. We would have had to explore more of the card pool, but it's not an auto loss with enough tech. There are things you can do, and so it would have just been a matter of exploring the cards available and coming up with a game plan. Because that's all it is. That's all every deck in Fab is trying to do. Have a game plan that works into most matchups, and then dodge the ones that you can't develop a game plan for.
It's true. And that makes me think also about how you say that, Iris, the worst matchups are Luminaris Prism, right? And so the tricky thing, right, when you're trying to design a deck for a competitive event, right, where you're not just trying to just get games in, you're trying to go the distance and get all the way to the finals, it's very difficult to consistently dodge your bad matchups, right? Sometimes it happens, right? Sometimes you can get your favorite matchup, Gem smiles upon you, and you're very happy. But at the end of the day, if you know that Prism is a very powerful deck with Luminaris, and its matchup spread is not that much different from yours, except they crush you, the risk of doing the Iris list kind of becomes apparent once you might get to top 8 and you might have to face a Prism, and then it's a non-game. So I think maybe even though there was room for Iris to come in, especially with the advent of a different metagame where more decks were kind of coming around to keep maybe some other Iris bad matchups out of the way, maybe the risk of facing those auto losses was just a little too high, and the trade-off for running Luminaris was not worse enough overall, right, to make you, the general Prism player, pick Iris over Luminaris to experiment with, perhaps.
I think my efforts to get some people interested in the deck have shown that it's always going to be a niche pick, and honestly, it can stay that way. The Mirror is a very long, drawn-out experience where you genuinely play for fatigue from turn 0. It can be fun, but you have to have a good relationship with your opponent. You have to get some banter in there to keep things interesting during the game. I think it is quite important to touch on what you just said about the matchup spread, because that's not entirely true. The way I think about Luminaris Prism, and specifically Luminaris Prism, is that you can almost split the metagame into a series of 80+% win rate matchups and 40 or less % win rate matchups, and often those 40% are 30 or worse. And everyone wants to believe that their favorite deck can perform in every metagame. Everyone wants to overinflate their bad matchups, and oh, they're not that bad. It's just a little bit more copium. We can win it with one more tick slot. And the realistically, there are some matchups that a deck is not going to be able to win or not be favored into at the very least. So the goal with Iris, we're delving almost into why we chose. Well, why myself and the other members of my team at Worlds chose to start playing this deck when we did. Because the primary motivator was about flattening that matchup spread. Take these matchups that are 80+%, you take those matchups that are maybe 30 or less, and you just shunt all of them back towards that 50% mark. And most importantly, just like we talked about with the Briar meta, you give yourself more agency. When you give yourself agency, you give yourself leverage to be able to use any sort of skill you have over your opponent in the specific matchup. And, as one tricks, you end up being able to play your hero quite well. And so, this is where the illusionist mantra comes in. Just skill gap them. Every single matchup, there's no such thing as a bad matchup. You just have to skill gap them. And that was honestly where Iris came from. We chose the deck to play at Worlds for the Blitz portion. I registered the list, and the list I've been trying to share around has been it was the exact 40 I registered for Worlds in the Blitz portion. Unfortunately, I got COVID and had to drop out at the end of day one, which was very disappointing. But there were a couple of other members of my team that were on the list, and in the battle hardened, I think 2 or 3 of them registered Iris Prism, and across the day we had a single loss to a non-Luminaris deck. And I think we only had 3 or 4 losses in total across the 3 members of the team playing it. But
That's
I do
fantastic.
remember there was one loss to an Icelander.
I think we have your list here. The Blitz list with Iris, Crown of Providence, Crown of Reflection, Spring Tunic, Halo for the Spell Void, no doubt. The Ironhide, Nullroom Gloves, Robe, Footsteps, Stilettos, and Wave of Reality. So I assume you've got it pulled up on your side as well here. So if you want to walk us through, for the people who might not be familiar with the Iris type of lists, kind of what were some of the main card choices in here that ended up working out for you? And what was the metagame really like? As someone who didn't get to play a lot of Flesh and Blood in the past couple months, I'm very curious as well to know, it seems we got a lot of blues, obviously, the 3 blocks, the blue auras, hard to find all. You said that was very important for using the Footsteps and probably with the Soul or even the Brothers in Arm, a whole bunch of ways to use it there, and a lot of the D-reacts. So try and walk us through a bit of your thought process, how you ended up on this list specifically, and maybe how it was meant to attack the metagame.
Yep, can do. Really quick though, I have to shout someone out because I can't talk about this Iris list without mentioning Nick Colas. Nick is a friend of mine. He's another Prism One Trick, another Fab Dad based in Auckland, New Zealand. And he was also a champion of Iris Prism for a very long time. And most of you will remember him as the person that has got the highest number of heroes banned in Classic Constructed, and probably will always be the person that got the highest number of heroes banned in Classic Constructed by playing Young Prism at New Zealand Nationals last year, and as a result getting all young heroes banned from the Classic Constructed format.
Which I have to cut in and say, I can't forgive you for getting her banned like that. When Prism was Living Legended, day one on Talishar, I had Young Prism with 3 copies of everything that under the sun in there. I even tried to put some librarians in there just to have some fun, and I can't do it anymore. So, we had a good thing going, flying under the radar, but it was inevitable, I presume, especially with Benji and Chain also lurking in the shadows there.
If it wasn't Prism, eventually we would have had a hero that was strong enough to overcome a 20 life handicap. And, Nick did surprisingly well at that event, which I think may have also spurred the decision on. But Nick worked with me on this list. He and I worked together on some of the early iterations, and then I spent a lot of time thinking and tuning it before we hit it into Worlds. And I mean, this is not the exact list that I took to Worlds, The only changes were the Brothers in Arms were impenetrable beliefs in the blue slots. And of course, Wave of Reality didn't exist at the time. I can't even remember what we had in this place. Might have been just a random iron rod. I think we just had a functionally spare equipment slot that ended up being either a Nullaroon or, a Hope Merchant's Hood, which is my default piece of equipment to play. You play the Cope Merchant's Hood when there's nothing else for the slot. But yeah, this list. Oh, we were targeting a metagame of Oldhim, Icelander, and Chain. And we expected those 3 decks to make up the majority of the metagame, and so we wanted to choose a deck that had a winning or strongly winning matchup into all of them. The only real hurdle for Prism was Chain. On Luminaris builds, you could try to fatigue, you could try to aggro. There was no one consistent strategy, which was the primary issue. Pretty much no matter what you did, the best you could do was a coin flip. And so we looked at that matchup and said, well, if we think this is probably the most powerful thing you can be doing in the Blitz format, a lot of people will bring it. How do we attack it? And this was the answer we came up with. Step 1, don't die. Step 2, gain a little bit of life along the way. And step 3, leverage the combination of defense reactions, efficient use of pitch, the fact that Crown of Providence is a key player in the matchup and lets you cycle a no-block aura into something that does block. And of course, Arclight Sentinel. And you just leverage all of these cards into a functionally unwinnable endgame state for Chain, where I genuinely had a winning matchup into Chain on Fatigue. The first time we tested the matchup with the first variant, the first iteration of the list, that it was running some questionable cards at the time. It turns out there were some yellow unmovables, things that they are good, but they lowered the consistency of the deck, and they specifically made the Chain matchup quite a bit worse. And even there, the first 3 games we played was 2-1 to Iris, and as we played more, it only felt easier and easier on the Iris side of things. All of a sudden, you're fatiguing Chain with 10, 12, 15 life left, and you're just going, maybe this deck is real. Maybe there is actually something here to continue exploring. The only other tech slot to talk about for Chain was the single Enigma Chimera in the blue slot, which of course had a very specific function of killing Ursa. The only way Chain could beat this list was by getting your life total low enough for Ursa to matter, and then locking you into Soul Shackle, Ursa, make a Rune Chant, attack with Thorn, for a total of 8 physical and 1 arcane damage over a turn. And if you're low enough where you can't tank that damage, you have to spend 2 cards to block Ursa, and usually 1 to 1.5 cards to do something about Rosetta Thorn. It's a losing endgame.
Yeah, I have to say, as a person who brought red and yellow Chimeras to Pro Tour New Jersey, I love the card. A vanilla that just hits really hard is pretty good in a lot of ways. And I know that the 3-block blue pitch, it seems innocuous on the surface, but it's the Enigma Chimera. Don't sleep on it. We have a lot of Illusionist cards that came out since then, with Everfest that, no one ended up playing, right? A lot of the generic Illusionist cards didn't really see a lot of play. And then even in Dynasty, which we'll be talking about shortly here, there were a lot of Illusionist cards still to come that have yet to really find a home. So why don't we move from this Blitz focus, which again, thank you for sharing the list. It's very interesting and very cool. The only really thing that I'm noticing here is that there's no Ode to Wrath, and I guess that makes sense because, it's just a big ask to get the value off of it when you've got to survive, right? And so you have to kind of make those hard cuts. But
no Parable either. But again, even Genesis kind of sucks in this list. There aren't many hits for it. It's just about not dying and having cards that don't block it leads to dying. So Try and limit those as much as you can.
Sure. Yeah. So when we talk about how we went from the LL of Prism, the time where she's very popular in Blitz to handle things like Oldhim and Icelander, and maybe could do something to Rhinar, maybe not. Maybe he stopped being more of a threat in the metagame. But when we got to Dynasty, the ability of playing Prism was basically just relegated to Blitz entirely, and Dromai herself got a lot of access to new Illusionist cards, but never really ended up using most of them. But the reason for that isn't that they're bad cards necessarily, they just seem to support an archetype that doesn't yet exist. The right hero doesn't exist for these ward cards yet. At least that's what is possible to happen. So what's your take on the Dynasty cards, the Illusionist generic cards? What does Invoke Soraya mean for the future of Light Illusionists? And what do we think is going to happen with Dusk Till Dawn coming up? And we can take these questions in any order. So let's just start with like Dynasty. What do we think is going to happen with Illusionists going forward? And what would it take for these cards to see play?
I've thought about this a lot. I'm sure, as you would expect. I agree with you that I think this ward package is trying to seed a new hero rather than support existing ones. I mean, I haven't tested it as much as I should, but I can never test things as much as I should. But the ward package, it's just missing something. And that something will most likely be, you know, another common cycle, another rare cycle, a couple of Majestics, and a hero. And we just don't know what that hero will read. I'm at the point where, in terms of Dynasty, Waves of Reality, these Illusionist arms, best arms in slot for a Prism. And of course, at this point, we can only play them in Blitz, but the card has more than proven itself to me over its time in Blitz, and I think when I get to CC, it will be my de facto arm slot of choice. I love that thing. It's just so powerful. It does everything you want. But ward as a keyword is quite an interesting one in that it almost tends to amplify Prism's existing weaknesses. So ward, of course, if you would be dealt damage, prevent the next X of that damage. And, you know, we've mainly seen just 1 and 4 on Illusionist cards to date, right?
Yes,
it's
so far only 1 and 4 exist.
Yeah. I think it's just Soraya that has Ward 4.
Technically, the Sigil of Protection, the 1-cost generic from Uprising has it as well, but
the red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in Illusionist,
if you're playing Sigil of Protection, you'll probably have some bigger problems.
Yeah, let's not do that.
Soraya is a pile of value. I've been meaning to pick up a copy of the card forever because it hasn't really made any waves so far, but of course Blitz is not the most played format. CC is the real deal. And the card is just good. There are no two ways about it. It's always been a case of this card is a pile of value. You can represent, you know, you lose a Spectral Shield, and in exchange you get up to 5 damage, up to 5 life gain, and up to 4 prevention. So functionally, that's almost, you know, 13 value, being 5, 5, 4 minus the 1 from the shield. And you get that for what? 4 resources? It's pretty good. It's
Let's take a second here also for anybody who's just able to listen right now and maybe is not familiar with our cards as much as we are, right, to go over just why Invoke Soraya is getting this glowing review here. So Invoke Soraya is a yellow 3-block light illusionist action, invocation, so the same type of card that Dromai uses to make her dragons. It costs 2 to play and is legendary, so you can only have 1 copy, just like a Tumultai or a Dominion. And so what it allows you to do is transform a Spectral Shield that you control into Soraya, who on the back side is a 4-power, 4 HP Angel ally for the Light Illusionist. And as a once per turn action that costs 2 resources, you can attack with her. And whenever she attacks, you can also banish a light card from your soul. And if you do, she deals 1 arcane to any target. And whenever she does damage at all, you gain that much life. And she has Ward 4. So right off the bat, she's a highly powerful, non-phantasm having ally, which is notable. She can attack with total freedom into anybody, and as long as they can't pop your face with the ward damage while you're attacking. She's going to be able to, like you said, threaten that 5 life game, deal 5 damage, and then if they want to kill her, they either have to try and attack your face and get 1 damage through your other wards or your defensive deck. And if they want to kill her, they could throw 4 damage at her, but that's 4 damage that's not coming at your face. So again, that's a win-win as far as the Prism's concerned.
And I mean, that is honestly this card. It's a bit of a win-win. Its shortcomings are honestly that it lets your opponent's damage prevention, be it blocking or other effects, they just get to serve double duty. So, you know, we talk about 13 value for 4 resources, 2 to play it, 2 to attack. And that's the ceiling. But, you know, if your opponent throws a single block 3 under there, you're losing a card from Soul, which isn't quite worth a full point of value, but it is something. It's generally worth about half a card, is what we valued it in the past, right?
Yeah.
Card and Soul, yeah. But your opponent blocks for 3, and you've spent a card and Soul, you get 1 arcane, you get 1 physical through, and all of a sudden you've only got 4 value off your attack, which is not a good rate to pay 4 for. And then your opponent, you know, say they're a ninja, they activate Harmonized Kodachi and attack you for 1. You go, well, turns out Ward 4 isn't great in this situation.
You'd rather have 4 Ward 1s, right? So
exactly. So the card is a pile of value, but its shortcomings so far are that it allows your opponent's blocks to do double duty, and it is a bit inflexible. And Prism in the past has always been a hero that cares about flexibility. You know, flexibility is king, the ability to adapt to a matchup, even sometimes within the game you're playing. It's just the essence of the hero, I would say. So having a tool like Soraya, it is one more tool that is different to other things Prism has access to. But I am still waiting and seeing to figure out how she fits into any sort of lists. And I suspect that'll happen when we get a new Light Illusionist in CC.
Exactly. And the other thing too is this is the first time we've had a ally for Prism, right? Outside of the generic Illusionist Ghostly Touch. So I'm very excited that we've got 1 Herald. There are 7 more. It would be really cool if we got more of these angel allies in the future that might differ in some ways and maybe are not legendary in some cases. It could be interesting to see if we actually get to lean more into this ally focus for Illusionists going forward and not only focus on the auras or only focus on the phantasms. Get that 3rd dimension going.
Allies are probably the future of the Illusionist class. There's just no 2 ways about it. It's a balanced spectra for the most part.
For the most part, right? And so the only other really cards that are from Dynasty that I think we really want to talk about here are going to be things like the heavy emphasis on Spectral Shield. So we've got things like Spectral Procession, a 0 cost red 3 block 0 attack, technically it's a star, where its attack is equal to the number of Spectral Shields you control, and it has Phantasm. So for this to be better than a Wounding Blow, you need to control 4 Spectral Shields, and then even more because the Wounding Blow doesn't have Phantasm, so you'd have to have even more than 4 Spectral Shields.
Yeah.
When I first saw this, you know, going back to the countless games that we've played of Prism, keeping Spectral Shields alive is kind of impossible, right? And if it's possible, you have to devote a lot of resources to doing it. It's very difficult to get a big board state and maintain it for any period of time. And so the main reason for that, honestly, is that Luminaris made that extremely scary, right? Your board of Spectral Shields represented a ton of basically unblockable damage and would let you snowball out of control. And so LSS had to be very careful to not give us too much easy access to generating those shields, as we saw with Haze Bending being a bit of a part in that puzzle to make it very difficult for Prism to be overwhelmed. But when we saw cards like Spectral Procession or Spectral Prowler, which gets go again if you control a Spectral Shield, or Spectral Rider, which gets Overpower, it's kind of a pseudo-dominate when you have a Spectral Shield, we're starting to see more of this word synergy, this more defensive pillow fort type of illusionist, where maybe without the future potential ability to leverage Luminaris with the easy damage out of auras, kind of like Iris, right? You have to pay to attack. Maybe that's going to give LSS the freedom to print the ability to make more Spectral Shields easier, because they won't have that offensive value inherent to them anymore. You'll have to combo them with other things, which could make Spectral Procession possibly attack for 6 in a more, a more reasonable expectation. When we have cards like Blessing of Spirits, at the start of your turn, destroy this, then create 3 Spectral Shield tokens with Ward 1. Sure, it doesn't have Go Again and it costs resources, but if this is just the start of the ability to make more Spectral Shields, we might be able to see these new cards really come into their own and synergize with each other by giving us that larger word count.
You know, even Runeblade as a class is where I look for these kind of effects now. Started with Read the Runes. We now have, Blessing of the Occult, I think it's called, and also Runeblood Incantation. And I'm pretty sure you had a custom card that was functionally just Runeblood Incantation, but instead of making a rune chant, it makes a Spectral Shield.
Yes, but mine cost 3.
Oh, yours cost 3. Oh, God.
Yeah, it was an Iris target.
Yes, an Iris target. But, it just means that the design space for these kind of effects does exist. We might see them in future. And, honestly, the first time I saw Spectral Precision, I went, it's good, but the only matchups that you're able to build up any sort of, a significant number of shields into are the ones for which a high power phantasm attack means nothing. So, what are we meant to do with this? But, I mean, like other Dynasty cards, in the context of Luminaris, they make a lot more sense. Phantasmal Symbiosis, of course. Why did we get yet another Wartune Herald? 1 for 6 as a yellow with Go Again. Well, with Go Again thanks to Luminaris. As a block 3 is insane. And then you got access to turning off a popper for the turn by turning it into an Illusionist card. And Wartune Herald has always been an incredibly powerful card. So giving us functionally more copies of it with Miraging Metamorph and then Phantasmal Symbiosis, I think that almost locks in that we're not getting as easy access to Go Again. Ever again.
I think you're right. And I think, so the way that LSS normally releases new cards, they have to send the cards to the printers quite a bit ahead of time so they can actually produce the supply that hits the market. And so at the time when Phantasmal Symbiosis was created, Prism was almost certainly still legal for CC. And so I imagine that if Prism did not quite get over that LL type of point threshold, LSS might have included this card to say, hey, let's just give her a little bump. Let's just get her to Living Legend. Just make sure it happens. And then they can send Luminaris into the sunset because it has definitely been one of the most polarizing and controversial weapons in the game, to the point where people were wanting to just ban it outright for quite a long time.
It's a little bit controversial, but Luminaris, I think, challenges stuff like Duskblade, Rosetta Thorn, even Winter's Wail for the most powerful weapon in the game. And I do think Luminaris is the most powerful weapon in the game. It's maybe the most powerful card in the game. It's definitely up there, at the very least. And, I've often talked about Prism as a hero held together by a pile of absolutely busted cards, but you can't take any of them away because the hero falls apart. And that was Luminaris. So we'll see what replaces it, but we've started toying with the idea of a shapeshifter constructed format where all class cards have all classes. And what we have genuinely seen in the early stages of people going like, oh yeah, this sounds cool, let's make a list. All roads lead to Rome, all lists converge towards Luminaris. The card is silly. It's probably a good thing that it's banned in Classic Constructed forever.
Very, very fair conclusion there. And so with that, we have going into the last bit of the discussion here. We've got to talk about the next set, Dusk Till Dawn. Very recently, we were told by the grapevine that we are going to get the next supplemental set this summer to be revisiting the Light and Shadow talents. And from interviews with James White and just from some more grapevine type of talk, we've heard that we will be getting a new Illusionist and new Runeblade to replace the ones that we've lost. It's not necessarily guaranteed that we'll get a light illusionist. It could be a shadow illusionist, maybe from the wording, but I think it's very certain that we'll be getting that light illusionist and the shadow runeblade to unlock all of our card pools that we had built up as players during the Monarch format and beyond. So with the new set coming up, how do we expect LSS to design and balance the new hero around the current card pool? How can we predict where it might go or speculate on what we would like it, where we'd like it to go? And like you said, will we get a Luminaris replacement, or is that go agains on everything going off into the sunset forever?
Well, just quickly, I think Light Illusionist and Shadow Runeblade are both confirmed.
Sure.
I think the class and talent combination is confirmed for Dusk till Dawn. The answer to this, of course, is, again, I've thought about it a lot, and I think I have to conclude I don't know. I do not envy the designers being in this spot. The cards will have been designed, tested, sent off to the printers already. So they know what the new Light Illusionist and Shadow Runeblade read. We can only guess. And the more I've thought about it, I think I've come to the somewhat sad conclusion that I don't think there is a way to balance Prism as a hero without removing one of her core mechanics. So core mechanics being Spectra, Phantasm, Luminaris was functionally a core mechanic with the go again. And the more I've thought about it, the more, even the current card pool with Iris, I think would be just as powerful a force in the meta if we had a Prism text box that read literally any ability that gave you a way to renewably make Spectral Shields. And so that tells me that we're probably going to see a new hero that will be Prism, hopefully. Even that hasn't been confirmed officially yet. But hopefully it is Prism. She's the most popular character in the game, I'd say. It would be silly not to reprint a Prism. But I think we will see some hero text that messes with what made Prism such a polarizing hero in the first place. And I mean, there are many ways this could be done. It could be that, your permanents with Spectra have war decks. It could be attacks you control from a permanent with Spectra gain Phantasm. Like, there are so many ways you could balance a new Light Illusionist. But unfortunately, I think they all end up being, again, in this polarizing state of the current card pool is still broken, even without Luminaris. So we have to do something about it, but there isn't much you can do to balance the existing mechanics without completely destroying the hero. So I don't envy the designers, but there has to be some level of trust and hope, of course, where, again, I'm just waiting to see what they've come up with. And, we'll deal with the information as it comes and make decisions about the new hero when we have access to it.
So one of the big things that I'm hoping for, right, because we don't know, we have no idea where things are going. All we have is the same information everybody else does and just a lot of Prism experience to draw from and hopefully to get inside the designers' heads a little bit. And where I kind of feel things are at with Prism, I think that yes, her card pool is very strong because of Spectra, right? The blue Spectras from the moment they were released were extremely just polarizing and extremely oppressive. And short of banning them, they will forever be this, terror lurking under the lake here, ready to come out the moment they can and combo with the instant auras to just completely create this board state of passive effects that are very difficult to get rid of. And so
the floor for Prism decks is 24 auras, right? Even if Arclight Sentinel rides off into the sunset, 24 auras is a lot of auras.
Exactly. And so my main thought is just when I started playing Dromai, right? Dromai was an illusionist who still got to keep the go again, still got to keep the board state building aspect, but the price for that was losing access to good pitch cards, as well as losing access to the ability to attack through 6 attack. Everything has Phantasm, right? Dragons have Phantasm, the attack actions have Phantasm, unless they have 3 attack or less, in which case they don't have Phantasm, but like, that's fine. And so, you've got your cards like your Pierce Realities that serve as a buff to your attack actions. And you've got things like Haze Bending, which is, if they don't kill your auras, you don't get any value off of it at all, assuming that you don't have a weapon that can use them to swing with. And so giving the new Illusionist, the new Light Illusionist, access to Iris, all these things, the blue pitch, unless they're very strictly locked outside of blue pitch, it could definitely be the case that Iris would be very polarizing into Guardians, into Wizards, into these same kind of heroes, but into aggro, you basically just block out and become a new Guardian. And so we might lose that. We might lose the Go Again part of the axis. We might lose the Phantasm resilience on the auras. But personally, I think that's probably the least fun way they could go. To me, it just feels terrible to swing a dragon and just have it popped all game, and you just can't really do anything. It just feels very like it's balanced, sure, but it doesn't feel good because you play your cards and don't do anything with them.
Would you say there's almost a lack of agency?
I would indeed say that it's just a lack of meaningful choice, right? And yes, one of the big things that brought me to Prism in the first place was the fact that every card had nuance and every card felt like you had a choice. Do I use this for pitch? Do I use this to block? Do I use this to play? They were all compelling options, and it was about navigating in each matchup which of those you were going to do. And so my hope is that LSS has looked at how Prism plays, is going to try and keep her different from Dromai in the sense that they will not just be a light version of the same set of the strengths of the axes, right? To not have the auras have Phantasm, that would feel terrible. But giving them Ward would be a very interesting way to go about it as well. We see that with Soraya, where sure, you could attack Soraya, but if you get 1 damage through to the Prism and your Spectras pay the price and you don't lose your Go Again because you didn't attack it, that could be the way that they go about it. And that would help them be able to balance those defensive lists as well. And maybe there's some other interactions with Ward, right? We have a lot of cards like Celestial Kimono, which I will pull up here in a moment, because this card is sort of a chess piece that synergizes with Ward. If a ward that you control that's non-token is destroyed, you get a resource on either player's turn once per turn. And it has Ward itself. So if you take damage early game and lose this, well, there goes your chess piece, right? And that kind of sucks. But if you have enough Ward to be able to selectively cover breakpoints and keep the Kimono in the back line and be the last ward of yours that's destroyed, we might see a new Illusionist who's able to put enough different wards out there, put enough damage reduction effects out there while being a more defensive hero in general, again, by sacrificing the Luminaris swinging power to get access to more defense, and maybe make Celestial Kimono make some sense over running Tunic or something. So either way, I think that's going to about do it for us here. Thank you very much again for coming onto the channel and lending your expertise and experience. Is there anybody that you want to shout out now? Any things you want to plug at the end here?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Been a pleasure. Only other shout-outs, I guess, would be the team that I went to Worlds with. I mentioned them, but I didn't actually shout them out. So thanks to the Misplays for, just kind of letting me cook. I tuned most of the Cyrus list by myself after building it with Nicholas. But the Misplays, they had their support. I had a lot of enthusiasm, just genuine belief. They got caught up in the whirlwind of, wait, maybe Iris is real, and to the point of a few of them played it in the Battle Hardened at Worlds. So shout out to the Misplays, shout out to Nick again, and yep, shout out to the devs that are having to design the new Light Illusionist for us.
Sure. So thank you all for joining us. Keep it here on the channel for more videos to come, and have a great day.
All right. Thanks, guys.